So welcome back. As I said, this is the Reejig Masterclass. This is where we unbundle work one industry at a time. Today, we're focusing on the aerospace and defense industry, which was actually an industry that I needed to go deeper and understand more because they're so specific from a job perspective, but it's exciting as well as another industry to continue to evolve. So more to come, and thank you again for joining in and listening in. If you have any questions, let us know. We'll try to incorporate them as we go as well and make it more interactive as possible, for this time that we are together. So we are here. My name is Nuno Goncalves. I'm heading up workforce strategy for Reejig. I'm joined here with Mike Reed. Mike is our Chief Product Officer. He's one of the co-founders of Reejig, one of the masterminds of building what Reejig is today and what Reejig will be tomorrow. And he's always a treat, as you know, and those of us that are joining us not for the first time as well. So you will, I always learn from him and all the insights that he brings and perspectives as well. So tune in, stay tuned, and for the data that he will be sharing as well. So it's an industry, as you know, that is in transformation, fueled by innovation. It's been like that for many, many years, Mike, right? It's an industry from a robotics perspective and technology perspective that has been always advanced. It's not a wide, you don't have like 100 and 200 kind of players and multiple players as in any other industries, but you always have very specialized roles and very specialized technology that are ultimately transforming and evolving the industry as well. So Mike, welcome to the conversation. We'll dive in on everything that is happening here. And there are some few really interesting roles that I would love for us to explore moving forward. So let me frame the conversation if we go to the agenda. So typically what we do on our skills masterclass, that we give you an industry outlook. What are we talking about from a sizing perspective in the industry? And where are we seeing the industry going in some of the biggest trends one way or the other? As you know, Reejig is the company that ultimately is mapping work in the world. We will show you and we'll tell you how do we do kind of these work ontologies and what a work ontology looks like for us. How are we creating visibility on what work is done today and what work will be done in the future? And of course, how work is being transformed and how one way or the other AI is impacting everything that we do and is pushing companies to boundaries that they've never experienced before, companies that are transforming themselves to make sure that they supercharge the way that they operate, and they are even, in some cases, even do work very differently to deliver faster, better, more valuable, and with less people, but with more profitability as well. But as you know, Reejig is really good in balance. We believe in being very bold, and you'll see us talk about being bold and responsible, being very bold on the way that you transform and understand how you will be doing work in the future, but also on the other side, bringing people with you, right, Mike? We're people that people that you need to reskill, giving you visibility of the skills of the future, and hopefully allowing you to proactively upskill and reskill your people to bring them through your transformation as well. One of the things that, and last but not least, we are very big in, yes, the data, yes, insights, but what do we do with it? Then it's ultimately the part where we say, okay, what are the actions? What are the paths for the future? What do you need to do to ultimately be able to start acting on some of the data and insights that we are providing here as well? So that's the plan for today. And we will go as deep as you want us to go and keep it alive in the chat. And even if you want to DM us, both Mike and I on LinkedIn, we'll be able to pick that up as well. So that's the plan for today, Mike. If we start talking and drilling deeper on the aerospace and defense industry, it's huge. We're talking about almost like $1 trillion, 985 billion in sales. It's a 11.1% increase from previous years. I think maybe because of some of the socioeconomic changes that we've been seeing in the past years, Mike. I would love to have your thoughts here, but 11.1% increase, it's not something that you see in every single industry, right?
Particularly that size, it's not mucking around dollars, is it? But I guess we see a whole lot of tensions globally. But also, I think we're at a transformational point in the aerospace industry too, where it's looking to sustainability. And I think we'll spend a bit of time today talking about the maintenance aspect of it, but really shifting in both of these industries, aerospace and defence, to design for maintenance, so that there's, rather than the big ticket sale being where the revenue is being led from, looking for after sales and maintenance, MRO, as significant revenue streams for the manufacturers in these industries. Aerospace, defence, as you said, dominated by a small number of large players. Defence, we do see some niche suppliers emerging, particularly in terms of delivery systems. But again, in terms of the size of the overall workforce, the skills that we're looking for, really a small number of large players delivering across the globe.
Yeah, and it's highly specialized roles, right? So you have, it's a combination between also on one side kind of manufacturing and being in robotics, but also on the other side, highly specialized roles from a technology perspective, right? Is it fair to say that it's actually being transformed on both sides, right? Both on the technology
Absolutely.
side and also on the manufacturing, which kind of a double play, which is very interesting to see, especially when we're seeing this 11.1% increase. It's also particular, and I don't know how this impacts the industry, but it's also particular on the fact that there's a lot of kind of what, and that's the last part there, where you see defense contractors projected to see record cash flows, $52 billion by 2026. So it's from there's the corporations, but then there's these contractors, all these contractors that are doing work, again, specialized contractors on some of these pieces as well. That is also an interesting, singularity of this industry as well. So it's interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, pulling a couple of threads there, all of those numbers in the main block are all going up. Both the sales, the broadest general spend in the market, in the defence space, as well as specific defence contractors, all going up. I'm going to jump ahead, but that bottom right hand corner talks about a 5.2% growth to 2024.
Yeah.
Interestingly, in the US spend, it's pretty much leveled for 2025. So the US defence budget for 2025 is leveled off. I don't under new leadership. It would be interesting to see how the 2025 budget is expected to deliver an increased level of service for the same. So we know that there's a general cost-cutting initiative across US federal and US spend, but it is interesting under the new government to see that they've effectively capped spending for 2025. It's the first.
Well, but not reducing.
Growth.
Yeah, but not reducing, because everything in everything else, we're seeing heavy reductions and in some cases even eliminations, right? So maybe in this case, kind of stabilizing the investment means actually continuing to invest as well, in one way or the other. So really good stuff. But if soundbites, big industry, huge growth, will continue to grow as we're seeing one way or the other. It's very specialized roles that will ultimately be very exposed from a robotics perspective, but also from a technology perspective, which ultimately means it's a great playground for companies that want to transform themselves. And it's a great playground for us to actually understand what are the trends of the future based on the evolution of work as well. So this is good stuff, Mike.
Yep. The connection between defense
and
research, the connection between defense and research, like academic research in general, reflects an industry that typically thrives on innovation. It's looking for advantage, both in the outputs in products, but also in process. So I think that really talks to an industry that is built on change, built for change, deep connections to research and staying in front of the curve, in front of your normal commercial industries. But yeah, really one that's used to being in transformation.
And you said to be in front of the curve. So I would imagine, I think that's maybe true for most of the industries, probably even more here, the velocity, the speed of innovation and the speed to market as well. Would it be fair to say that this is kind of a big differentiator also for this industry, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's driving some of the transformation in the workforce. digital twinning scenarios, simulations, augmented reality. Some of the workforce requirements now are really what reflect that drive.
This is so cool. It's really interesting. You know, you often see more industries that are exposed more from a kind of a go-to-market perspective, or industries that are more exposed more from a supply chain perspective, manufacturing perspective. Here, you actually have a little bit of everything, which is an interesting place to be as well, and even a more reason for you to actually reflect on what you need to do to for your commercial advantage and competitive advantage, you know, with other of your competitors as well. So really good. Let's have a look at what some of the CEOs of these industries are actually saying as well. And we have here the CEO of Airbus, and very interestingly, they're three different angles, but that are complementary. On one angle, you see Guillaume from Airbus, challenges on delivery targets and supply chain as well. And I'm assuming, you know, everything around the tariffs and all what we've been seeing since the beginning of the year is impacting this. We had this conversation around the automotive, that this is ultimately giving more pressure because there's so much complexity on some of the supply chains, right? With some parts being done in one side and some parts being done on the other side, and you need to assemble on the third place, that if you actually have to pay tariffs, you know, in every single one of those border transitions, then the cost actually implodes as well, which ultimately is pushing for a more simplified supply chain that I think the CEO of Airbus is mentioning there. CEO of Safran talking about talent, skills, you know, the labor shortages as well. And I would assume here not only because of where some of the places where they have their manufacturing and supply chain, but also given some of the evolution on technology and the new skills and the net new skills that are arriving also to this industry as well. We see also the co-founder of Andreessen Horowitz that is talking about kind of the robotics piece, which is something that I know you love, which is even another dimension, right? As we said, this industry brings together this kind of the robotics and the automation and everything in one single place. And the reality is that it also gives the possibility to start imagining how to do work differently, how to do transportation differently, how to do defense differently as well. And from a robotics and technology view. So if we step back, Mike, it's big industry, complex in many different angles and dimensions, and CEOs having to deal with the usual things like talent shortages and skill shortages, but on the other side, and the supply chain, but on the other side, this pressure from for innovation and acceleration as well. So how do we and all of us that are in these industries are able to understand what needs to be done in every single one of these organizations? It will be an amazing process and journey to lead some of the investment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting when we were scanning the public reporting from these organizations, and I think the CEO of Safran makes interesting points because they're all related to inputs. The shortage of labor just means it's more expensive. Raw materials availability more expensive. Higher energy prices. All of these things are inputs that are getting more expensive. And it's easy to focus on defence because that feels like a pressing need. But the other side of this is the aerospace industry, and right. Recognizing that the changes there in order to support sustainability and cost effectiveness in a maintainable fleet. It means they're designing them to be maintained, designing the platforms, the aircraft differently. But they're also looking at a completely different commercial model, because now rather than selling a big ticket plane, they might be leasing a plane by the hour. So you're leasing the plane for the time it's in the air, and under a different commercial model that impacts the whole way it's being delivered. So the pressures to do everything differently, to deliver a different product, but not just the product experience. The users of your plane, of your aircraft, want to have that experience ongoing. They want to continue to have an experience. So how do we continue to deliver features to the users of aircraft? These are not small investments. These are big ticket items. Like as we often say, unless you're in the aircraft industry, your most expensive people are most expensive assets are your people. Well, we're talking about the aircraft industry now. So this is the scenario where the people are now serving what is a significantly expensive investment for many of the customers. But it really is, it's transitioning, the whole commercial model is transitioning.
It's very particular, the industry, and it's the more I dig deeper on the industry, the more exciting it is, because I think it actually in some cases ultimately multiplies some of the challenges that others in other companies and other industries have as well. We haven't touched much on cybersecurity, and would love to have your perspective here, because if there's a place where we want to make sure that it is safe, is when we're up in the air. But if we're seeing some of the advancements of technology and ChatGPTs and coding and everything accelerating here, so I'm assuming it's accelerating on those that actually want to put things at risk and those that want to defend from those risks. But still, the speed of how this is evolving will be important as well, and even the skills there. No, Mike?
Yeah, significant evolution. It's interesting in all of these skills masterclasses. The models want to tell us what we already know. There's a lot of opportunity in the enterprise administration side of the industry, just the business as usual stuff, because it's a reasonable amount of repetitive stuff. And something that also comes out in almost every circumstance is cybersecurity. It's going to be the cost of doing business going forward. Aerospace and defence, even more so.
Right.
So again, I'm surprised I'm not giving away the end of the story, but cybersecurity will emerge as one of the areas of demand focus, both in terms of investment, to be bold, but also to make sure that you're retaining the people who have an understanding and equipping them to operate in this space. It's also the area where it's been hardest to get line of sight into what's different about the roles there, because again, as I said, these industries, defense industries, are so closely linked to research that they're in front of the bleeding edge of cybersecurity. So these are the areas that are setting what will be the standard in what would have been 5 years' time, 10 years' time, but it's likely to be 18 months. The kind of velocity that AI and cybersecurity is moving.
Yeah, and to your point, so I think it's a great segue to the next slide, where we actually talk about the bold piece that you were talking about, right? Because it's in some industries, bold might mean let's do this faster, let's do this much faster, let's be very bold. So which means much faster, which much more efficient and less duplication. For example, in some industries, this might be let's completely shape and reshape the way that we do work. And if we're seeing so many different dimensions in this industry, I'm actually very curious to see how bold these organizations will be, because in some cases they are known to be very more conservative industries, because again, it's around safety, it's around making sure it's also around sustainability, which is great, but it's how bold will they be to actually start doing work differently, the same way that some innovators are saying, let's completely shift the way that transportation as a whole, for example, in the air, for example. It will be really interesting to understand what will be those shifts here. But what Reejig, and for those that are tuning, listening in, what Reejig is really big is, and one of the things that is, I think, one of the biggest purposes of Reejig is to make sure that we are bold and responsible, which sometimes seem to be kind of in polar opposites, but I don't see them as polar opposites. I actually see them a little bit of the correlated responsible innovation one way or the other. So on one side, be very bold on how we do work and how will we transform and reimagine work, but on the other side, creating that line of sight of what that will mean for the future, what that will mean for your talent, to understand what are the skills that you need today, but also what are the skills that you need in the future, to understand what are the skills that probably you won't need in the future as well, Mike, because we've been always focusing on what we need for the future, but it's equally important to understand those that we don't need as well, so that we can actually stop investing on some of those skills, right? But that's where I think Reejig brings a differentiation here. It's, yes, being bold, giving you visibility of work, but also this visibility of work will allow you to have visibility on the skills that you need, the skills that you're going to need. And for me, very important, because, in the past decade, we've been working and all industry working on technology that shows kind of career paths for employees and so on and so forth, that we are not being irresponsible to the point that we're driving our employees to paths and to jobs that will not exist in the future. So how can we have those insights and be able to guide our organization to be very bold, but also our human capital, our employees, to actually be able to upskill and reskill in the right directions as well. And that's the intersection. And again, for those that know us really well, the end game for us is this zero wasted potential. We have all of us tremendous potential in our organization. Can we steer the talent that we have to make sure that they upskill themselves and get ready to the jobs of tomorrow as well? So this requires a new workforce strategy. It requires data, it requires insights, and requires you to actually understand what is right for your company, and then ultimately put the right course of action to be able to bring your organization to where it needs to be as well. I love this balance. I think it's very mutual. I think it's the right thing to do, and not one can live without the other, one way or the other, Mike, from my perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. The incentive to take the investment in your human capital and maximize it by giving them the toolkit to continue to be valuable is clear for all industries. Defense and aerospace also had that added barrier of entry. So it is harder to get people in the door because of security and certification requirements. So that investment in your people is even more valuable because it's harder to replace because this barrier exists. So I think more than any other organization, understanding what your people are capable of and what those adjacencies mean. How can I take their current skill set and upskill them in ones that they are likely to be successful in because those skills are adjacent or the tasks are adjacent.
And listen, as you talk about this, it's for me, it's kind of the chills a little bit, because ultimately, I've been a chief learner. You know my path, right? I've been very connected to kind of people development, skills development, and I've done the whole 9 yards, kind of, academies, universities, learning portfolios, big learning portfolios, and leadership, functional, all of that. And one of my biggest frustrations was always to really, I was being asked to develop skills, but I didn't know whether those were the right skills to develop or not, and to whom, and how much, and why, and what are the having this ability to actually be able to create clarity of the if-then scenario. It's always what I say, if we are doing this from an organizational perspective, here's the impact on an individual perspective. This feeds, and for me as someone that has been very focused on development of skills, this feeds everybody that is working on this with the purpose of, if we actually build those skills, people will be better, people will be delivering better and in more sustainable jobs in the future. I think it's a huge message and purpose for all the teams that are also doing a lot of the upskilling in the organizations as well.
Absolutely.
So here's how. If we go to the next slide, this is a journey, right? This is not, we're talking about a complex thing. It's actually reimagining the future from an organizational perspective and from an individual perspective. So there's no kind of simple, we do one thing and we have everything, kind of figured out. So this is a journey. So it depends on where you are and what do you have in your organization. There are things that are common, things that might not be common, but 3 buckets that are at the highest level, very high level, that are very important in your journey. First, focus on your work. How do you do work today? How do you think you're going to do work tomorrow, right? We have a very traditional, and some companies have very traditional ways of doing work, very sequential, very siloed based, and with typically a lot of duplication, with a lot of bureaucracy and so on and so forth. So the question is, how do you then reinvent your workforce? If you need to do it, how do you do that? And that's where Reejig is bringing, for me, one of the biggest added values to the industry is that we actually help you bring the clarity of where you are in your workforce, what work is done today in your organization, in your industry, but then we start highlighting you and surfacing some of the duplications that you have, some of the roles that are more exposed to AI, and you start understanding, okay, listen, if there are more, if there's duplication, let's remove duplication. So that's almost like low-hanging fruit. But then if you're seeing a huge impact, as we are seeing in this industry from a technology perspective, from a supply chain perspective, what are those roles that will be more impacted by AI? And when I say impacted, doesn't mean negatively impacted. What are the roles that will be more supercharged by AI, for example, right? So if you do not have the ability to be able to do that, you need to equip yourself to be able to do that. Because if you don't do that, then you don't create the foundations one way or the other. So reinvent your workforce here is your first step. Understanding where you are, understanding where you need to go, and then putting all the actions there. And we'll give you a little bit more details. And then once you have that information from a job perspective, from a work perspective, how does that impact your people? What are the skills that they have, and what are the skills that they need to have moving forward? That's the moving work to worker that you see over there. And then how do we train, retain, of course, and reskill our workforce one way or the other. And that might mean learning, that might mean mobility, that might mean so many different things, new gigs and so on and so forth. But we do it with the purpose of everything that we were able to identify so far as well. 3 clear dimensions, and we'll give you a little bit more information as we move forward. If we go to the next slide, and I think this is a brilliant insight that Reejig had probably 2.5 years ago, is that ultimately what gets automated are not the skills, it's the work. What changed? If we need to understand the impact on skills, we first need to understand the impact on work. And that's why Reejig built these work ontologies, these 23 industry-specific work ontologies that maps jobs, tasks, and skills. Job have tasks, right? AI automates the tasks, again, not the skills, but the correlation needs to happen, and we need to understand what are the skills that for the tasks that we will do in the future as well. And of course, people have skills. So how do we bring all of that together in a way that we understand work and then we understand the impact on skills is something that we are focusing on. You'll see that being translated on our ontology. And if we go to the next slide or the next couple of slides, we'll give you a little bit of visibility of what an ontology looks like, right? So remember, we said that ontology is ultimately a system, an ecosystem that correlates different information. This work ontology correlates jobs, correlates tasks, and correlates skills as well. So you can understand always and understand what skills are needed to do which tasks, what tasks are needed to do which jobs, and so on and so forth. So this is a web extract of a work ontology that we do for again, for every single industry, which means that we have these details information for every single job as well. That will give you a list of tasks that are included on those jobs. That will give you a list of skills. Here we divide the skills between general, human, and technical skills as well, but not in isolation. Not these are the tasks and these are the skills. No. It's here. If you double click on your task, you understand what are the skills that are associated to that task, which is amazing and ultimately very valuable for us. Is that we need all to understand that there's no one-to-one relationship between tasks and skills, right? Mike, there's a 1 to 3 or 1 to 5, meaning for each task that you have, and sometimes each subtask that you have, you'll require 3 or 5 skills one way or the other. That's the power of the ontology. It gives you the correlation between all of these data as well.
Yeah, and looking toward the future, looking towards automation and AI, there's not a one-to-one mapping there either. So the tasks that you are doing today and the tasks that are being done today in aerospace, defense, and in all industries are not necessarily the tasks as they will be done by automation or AI. If you're just automating the way humans are working at the moment, you might get faster. But the opportunity at the moment is as much to leverage AI to be generating the outputs in a different way as it is to just automate the things that humans are doing and have an agent that does it the same way. So it's not so much about a one-to-one mapping between here is the way this work is being done at the moment, and find a way of doing that same process in an automated fashion. While that is a step on the journey, it's what's possible in using AI to do this in a different way, or to execute with more value.
I think you're bringing a dimension that is very valuable, which is the maturity curve, right? You might be a more traditional company, and let's be transparent. So there are companies that have been very successful in the past 100 years and 150 years, right? And there's a recipe for success, and ultimately those companies are established companies that say, we've been earning a lot of money and a lot of success with this recipe. So sometimes it's harder for them to actually just reimagine completely the work and say, let's do this completely different. So would there be a world where we say, listen, yes, we are very well established and successful. Can we at least kind of a first step towards our evolution and transformation, do whatever we do it faster and better with less duplication, more efficient way, and so on and so forth. And then eventually go to say, okay, hold on, once we get there and we get our feet wet with AI and understand what does this mean from an AI, digital workers and so on and so forth, so that then the companies reinvent themselves? Or do you reckon that, companies that will exist tomorrow will be those that will be very bold from the get-go? They will need to completely transform themselves where they are right now if they want to survive in the future. What's your take, Mike?
Yeah, I think I can't think of an industry that will not demand transformation from the companies within in order to survive. And some of those will be at the front end of the curve, some of them will be at the back end of the curve. In aerospace and defense particularly, there is a very solid foundation of research and innovation, significant investment in standing up effectively organizations which are in that greenfield space, which are looking to solve differently and looking to understand how increased knowledge can be applied to deliver better outcomes. So more than most industries, there's already an established foundation in the A&D industry to support that. Yeah. What's really interesting is look as that transition, both in the nature of the outputs of these industries, but also the way the work's being done. What's really interesting is to watch for those threads of adjacency and commonality, so that we can leverage the skills that the workforce have and effectively amplify the value of those in the new environment. And it's moving, as you said a couple of slides ago, velocity is key here. The jobs that were locked down and stable 15 years ago as effectively a career for life, maybe transition and change every 18 months now. That's the change in the nature of work.
Yeah, I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense, Mike. If you have the insights and visibility of work, then you'll at least be able to start understanding what could be possible, the realm of possibilities, right? And that's where these kind of details of tasks will give you that realm of possibilities. These details of the skills will give you that, and then because you can see in the small lightning bolts, as to the people that are with us here, it's where we understand that there is more kind of exposure and opportunity also for automation. What are you going to do about it? If you go to the next slide, for example, and it just blows up some of the information that we have here, because we are operating at the level of the task, which for me is, in my brain, is the unit of work, right? Tasks and subtasks are the unit of work. Because we go to this unit of work, this atom, this we are able to understand task by task and subtask by subtask what is the level of exposure to AI. But we also are, because we map this throughout the organization, we are also able to understand what are tasks and subtasks that are being repeated in many parts of the organization. And there, you can make a decision on whether this duplication makes sense because it's your organizational design that says, it needs to be done in two different places, or where you actually need to simplify and actually start centralizing some of those tasks as well. So if you start giving you this information on task and potential and metrics and so on and so forth, you start understanding where you need to go to actually improve yourself and transform yourself, which I think has been a brilliant kind of story with many of the companies that we work with. Of course, you need to understand that implementation of AI, new digital workers, and so on and so forth, changing the way that you operate will require time and requires time for you to adjust and your organization to adjust. But it's not only about building digital workers, it's also about reskilling human workers and maybe reskilling also some digital workers so that they continue to do some of the work that you need to do as well. So these four dimensions for us are sitting on top of the great data that we have, because if we have the data on unit of work, on the tasks and subtasks, and the data on skills, if we can start inferring what is the exposure and what we can do, how technology can help us, how digital workers can help us to supercharge and to do faster and better some of that work, then we start understanding what is the realm of possibilities, and then up to us to understand, how fast do we want to transform or not.
Absolutely.
We transition to the next slide. So this is this typically, and if you're joining us for the first time, you haven't seen this, but if you've joined us, we always try to give you a perspective from not only a volume perspective, but a split of types of roles that exist in this industry. So 40%, as we said before, around kind of manufacturing and maintenance and the MRO specialists, and that you were talking about, but also a lot of data, a lot of engineering as well. There's no surprise in the Airbus and the Boeing and so on and so forth, and roughly a little bit over a third of the workforce that is kind of everything else, right? But a significant, almost like 40%. It's almost like half of it around manufacturing and maintenance, and still 15% on engineering as well. So reshaping, as we said, and we were talking about this earlier, AI and automation reshaping this industry, but also the robotics as well. There's a few things, and we'll be focusing on a couple of roles that I think are so very, very interesting right now, that talks about what you were mentioning earlier today, which is this predictive maintenance, right? We don't want planes to actually be doing maintenance while they're flying. So how can we anticipate this maintenance as well, which is something that is critical in the work. And then these digital twins, and we'll talk a little bit about this, which is kind of the replica of environments and real life environments that ultimately allows you to understand what can happen and prevent some of the risks as well. So if you don't have anything specifically in this slide, I would love actually to spend some time on the next slide as well on the roles as well. But anything that you want to highlight there, Mike, on the previous one?
No, I think the magic's going to be the data. So I'll jump into that. You've called out a couple of the areas that we're going to focus on.
Yeah, and this one's and I'll transition to Mike in a little bit, because he's you will kind of double click and deep dive on the data and these roles. But as I was learning about this industry and studying about this industry, one in particular actually jumped out, which is this digital twin simulator engineer, which I hadn't seen before, right? I had to go and look it up and really understand why is this one of the roles that have more AI and automation potential. But if you're joining us from a different industry, this digital twin simulation engineer is ultimately an engineer that actually creates and duplicates real-time scenarios and real-time environments, and ultimately trying to understand what will be the reaction of whatever they have from a product perspective in these simulation environments as well. One, pretty cool for me because I love digital and gaming and all of that, right? But it's something that also is being very powered by AI and very powered by technology and all, even I'm assuming also everything around the evolution of the semiconductor industry as well, and space and processing numbers and so on and so forth. We've talked about these cybersecurity analysts. Again, if there's an industry that is most needed, and it would be this one, and it's one that has high exposure to benefit from AI and automation and so on. And then, of course, the predictive maintenance that we've mentioned before as well. So 3 roles that we've identified that we wanted to talk here today, Mike, and I'll let you drive the rest of the folks that are with us on some of the particularities of these roles.
Cool. Let's go. Predictive maintenance. So MRO, I think across a number of industries as maintenance, repair, and operations. Often that sits in the realm of the end customer, but this is seen as like a significant and a significantly growing part of the A&D industry. Maintenance engineering was historically an afterthought, was ensuring that they delivered on the commitment, but it's really, as I said, fundamental to a commercial change in A&D. The OEMs are looking to after sales, looking to MRO as a significant and growing revenue stream. And that's not just about keeping the plane in the air, it's also making sure that plane is the best plane it can be. So it's delivering the upgrades to the platform, it's delivering the upgrades to the system They're going to make sure that it not only is it continuing to perform as the base requirement, but it's delivering the expectations on the customer, whether it's a defense customer or whether it's your aerospace customers. Predictive maintenance, common across industries with a large capital footprint, leverages historic data to understand how can we optimize the maintenance window? How can we ensure that we're getting to the component before it fails? One of the biggest transitions in A&D has been this design for maintenance, a huge focus on design for maintenance, so that they can minimize the amount of stuff, the duplications on platform, because of the confidence they have of being able to understand and maintain it before it gets to the failure condition, not just replacing it after 6 months, but replacing it when the IoT systems, when the monitoring systems are detecting these particular elements of motion. Significant commercial and operating benefits in the order of 60% by using some set of tools, but it's going to differ across industries. That translates to a bottom line benefit in the ROI margin. So per fleet, significant, and this is just an industry standard number across fleet size. So it's going to vary depending on whether it's a military or commercial, whether it's fleet or passenger. These are also anticipated to increase in headcount. So this is not an area where an individual's able to do more, requiring less individuals for the same scope of work, because not only are they doing more, but they're also servicing and delivering more. So there is an expected increase in this workforce. So this is a net gain in terms of a particular role. Some of these roles, particularly around the modelling to understand and interpret the historic data so that it can support predictive maintenance, are reasonably rapid to introduce. They're not the 3-month timeframes, but you should expect to have an implementation up and running and delivering value within a couple of quarters from the start of the process. Digital twin that you mentioned, Nuno, sits hand in hand with this. So once upon a time, digital twin was really an asset management tool to understand where things were. But now this is fundamental to the whole of the work stream through A&D. It's about design. It's about design for maintenance. It's about the manufacturer, and the fabrication is about the delivery. It's the operation and the maintenance. So the digital twin, which was historically just a different way of managing understanding of what assets were in play, now also contains access to this information to run simulations, to simulate real world physics, to model operations, to understand asset behavior, to understand implications of different supporting and maintenance regimes. So really, this is becoming foundational to the ability to execute on all of the other promises. The promises of MRO and predictive maintenance are possible because of the advances around digital twin simulations. And again, we see this is a role where investment is likely to increase the requirements around the headcount, because it's delivering value all the way up and down the stream. It's increasing the effectiveness of our manufacture and our fabrications. It's increasing the ability to pursue different avenues in design and to be deliberately operating it in order to get to be able to pursue different commercial models, like leasing by the hour and the year. And there are, particularly in aerospace and defence, there are significant and complex systems that can support this. So while this is some niche areas with GE and Siemens and Dassault, there are a range of suppliers here which are really tightly linked to the assets themselves to allow us to understand.
And I have a question, Mike. So
yeah.
When you were talking about kind of the predictive maintenance, and also on these kind of the twins, the engineer, the role of that these role, the part that these roles have in sustainability, right? In actually being able to fly better, but also with less CO2 emissions and so on and so forth. Would it be fair to say that these are kind of cornerstone roles that ultimately, one from a almost like a design perspective, right? Because one, it's a simulation kind of role and an anticipation proactive role, and the other one also proactive, but more from a mechanics perspective. Would these be fair to say that these are two roles that ultimately are also expected to have significant impact on the sustainability in this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. If we're looking to make any changes, any amendments to a platform design, the cost of fabricating that and demonstrating that it's achievable in the real world, significant. The detail that's possible, the physics that's possible in digital simulations allows a much broader range of alternatives to be considered and step changes to be considered before you get to that concept stage of actually bringing it to life in the real world. So the digital twin simulation is fundamental to accelerating those moves towards, like, aggressive is not the right word, but significant sustainability objectives. And the MRO, the predictive maintenance, is key to allowing it to maximize it, so that we're not seeing assets sitting down on the tarmac or wherever they are waiting for maintenance, that their operation is being maximized so that they're operating as efficiently and as effectively as they can. So both of these are super key to ensuring that the products and the platforms are delivering at their optimum. The last one that I've already jumped on here is cybersecurity, and this is something that comes up regularly across almost all of our skills masterclasses when we're diving deep into industries, and no different in aerospace and defence. Implications probably feel significant, like they do in healthcare, feel significant. As I said, the visibility into what's possible specifically for these industries is somewhat limited. But we do know that generally, both on the offense and the defensive side of cybersecurity, there are significant moves towards AI as the huge lever to change performance, either as a threat or in terms of defense. From a commercial point of view, managing your own data, there's potentially security complications, but there's also regulatory complications. So minimizing the amount of risk by improving the defensive posture, cybersecurity is becoming a more significant commercial driver. And again, this is one of those areas where we see a workforce transition. That any individuals who have compliance framework in their skill sets may have a path towards a role in cybersecurity, given that the heavy lift, the technical lift, which once used to be the requirement you needed from the individuals, is now becoming the function delivered by AI. If we're going to pick some winners out of here, because we do like to understand where to invest first, is the MRO, predictive maintenance engineering, and cyber security analysts. They're the quickest return. Digital twins and the simulations that sit around them are significantly more are a more significant investment. So the time to get to the outcome takes long, whereas access to historic operations data and the ability to build up ML models that talk about predictive maintenance are reasonably established. And cybersecurity is not just restricted to the A&D industry; it's general. So there's the ability to leverage the advances that are already happening there and move pretty quickly. So if you're going to start to transform your business, then they're the areas that you might look to try and invest, because they are what are going to propel you forward. But as you've said at the start, the other things that we want to be aware of is how do we be responsible and maximize the investment that we have already made in a workforce. So how do we become a skills building powerhouse by leveraging who we have so they can become who we need. And again, cybersecurity and admin keep popping up here as areas of significant opportunity across industries, just because of the amount of investments that's going across and the maturity across platforms. And the one in the middle here is one of the ones we've been talking about in the MRO space, about taking your current maintenance engineers and moving them into the preventative maintenance space. What we like to do is to look at how do I get somebody from who they are to who they could be. And we're focusing on those paths which are adjacent, where the skills they have are relevant to the skills that they'll need. The tasks that they're doing are aligned with the tasks that they will have to be doing. They may not be doing those tasks. They may not be managing tooling, managing AI or agents that are doing those tasks. But an understanding of that task that they have at the moment is material and valuable in that transition. So if we're looking at admin and back office staff, we see across a number of industries pathways to process automation. So what are those current data-heavy, manual, repetitive tasks that exist in an organisation that we can move forward? And giving those people who are currently involved in doing that work the ability to start to configure and customize the tooling that could do it is the path to process automation that we see across industries, including A&D. This is becoming more and more accessible through reskilling. So the cost of acquiring these skills is becoming lower. It's becoming more and more valuable for the individual because this requirement is becoming more and more useful across organizations. And the path to education here is reasonably open. There's a lot of different frameworks through which an individual can acquire these skills and increase their value to an organization. If you looked at the path from maintenance to predictive maintenance, again, this is becoming more and more common across manufacturing, production, automotive, as well as aerospace and defense. It leverages the deep understanding that the workforce in this space at the moment has about the performance specs and the operation of the equipment, and allows them now to start working with that tooling that looks at the implications of those assets and operations on the future. So it really looks at some of that specific ML modeling and IoT systems which are monitoring in real time rather than historic, and gives them the ability to leverage that based on what they know, based on their current skills and their current experience and expertise around platforms. So it really is about leveraging the things that they know and giving them the ability to use that at a higher level and operate in a predictive framework. And again, depending on the specific, while there are some generic system courses available for understanding of IoT and more generally about predictive maintenance, there is a lot that's quite specific to the platforms themselves. So the ability to take somebody and put them through those courses to understand more deeply how to think about predictive maintenance in an asset is generally aligned to the asset itself. But again, it's a significant value up because it really is changing the game around the operations, the ability to, as I said, move this commercial model to a very different model. And the last one we touch on again is around cybersecurity, which was historically quite a technical domain, but a lot of that heavy lift is now starting to become adopted by the AI and the technology itself in terms of both the offense and defense. So it becomes the ability to understand and manage this new tool. So step up from the technical cybersecurity aspects, understand the principles, but now manage the tooling that is doing it at a rate and in a way that wasn't previously possible. And again, we've talked about it from a bold perspective. These roles are growing, more of them are required. It's not that there's going to be less threats, there's going to be more threats, that there's going to require to be more defense. And in A&D, this is the bar to entry. Without protection, you're not able to play in the game. So not only is it mandatory for the industry, it's going to be mandatory for those people who are working in this industry to follow this path. And as I said, there's asset specific training, but there's also training across platforms in how that new tooling is working. Again, the cost of education here is going down, which makes it more accessible, which means the ROI for taking your workforce that understands the nature of your infrastructure and moving to this position where they can now be delivering even stronger defenses is significant for the organization, but it's also valuable for the individual. And we see a significant north of 20% increase in salary value.
This is great, Mike, and I think one is what I love about the conversations that we always have, around these industries is that we start very large and we talk about kind of the trends of the industry. We then say, okay, here's what we can do. It's just not about kind of picking one thing. It's not only about building skills kind of blindly. It's not only about doing organizational design and trying to have different silos, different org designs to kind of tackle the issues. It's not about the technology that you're going to implement kind of talent marketplaces, and it's not necessarily only about engagement surveys and all of that, right? So what I love about this is that I think we bring through what we have a view of where are the biggest trends, yes, but then what is the journey, right? And what we've been talking about this past almost 55 minutes, it's always a journey. It's not something that you can do on one thing and then you solve for the rest, right? Is around understanding your business, which if you're operating in a business for many years, then of course you have your understanding, but understanding your work understanding how work will evolve, I think it's a cornerstone of everything that all companies need to do. I don't know if it's only HR, but it's at least HR needs to understand the part of work. I don't think it's a place where HR spend a tremendous amount of time, but that's what we say is that ultimately, if there's anything that you need to know here, we gave the people that have joined us views of how the industry is going, how roles are going, how this is being impacted on one side from more manufacturing, supply chain, robotics, but also from an AI perspective. So we show the complexity, but then I think we need to deconstruct the complexity. And deconstructing the complexity means, listen, focus on work, reinvent work, make sure that you are able to understand what is the impact of work and everything that you're going to do from a work perspective, what's the impact on people. Mobilize your talents in a way that you're able to show and guide your talent to go to the roles that are more needed and where you will need them. And in the future, where will you need that talent in the future, which is the mobilize piece. And then once you start mobilizing and aligning the paths of growth, then invest also on your skilling and reskilling of your organization, of your people as well. So what I love, complexity. So it's big. As an industry, is very complex. As an industry, has multi channels of change and transformation as well. And this means that ultimately you need to understand as an organization where do you start, because it can be overwhelming, right? So many things changing and in so many places, from again supply chain to digital engineers. Where do we start? There's no single recipe to say 1, 2, 3, 4, because every single organization is specific. But if you bring that visibility, then you can start having a perspective of what will be your biggest takeaways and what will be your biggest prize if you ultimately transform and upskill as well. There is no company that will transform everything at the same time. You need to find your own journey, and that for me is one thing that is also very very important. So reinvent, mobilize, reskill, equip yourself with the right data, equip yourself with the right insights that Mike has just shared also here, and then make an action and decide. And one of the things that I love about this is that you at the end say, yes, here's the path of reskilling. You're not only talking about data and insights and very high level, but then what needs to be done, and here's the action moving forward. So I love this, Mike. Thank you for all the data here as well.
My pleasure. I think, yep, it does. I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun. Yeah, that's always like this. But thank you for those of you that joined. If we start looking forward, and if we click on the next slide, if you want to have more personalized kind of skills masterclass for your organization, just reach out. We love to educate. We love to engage and make sure that ultimately we understand where you are from a maturity, but also try to give you visibility of where you need to go and decomplexify some of the complexity that you might eventually have. So QR code over there, take it, book a personalized skills masterclass with us, and we'll try to give you as much insights as possible that are specific to you. If we look to the future, where Mike and I will be, we will do, I don't know if it's 180 degrees kind of shift here, but certainly very interested to go and have a deeper dive on the community services industry. Very different, very purposeful driven. And I'm very eager to actually go on the details of what does this mean and what will be the impact as always. So, and Mike, it's always a pleasure. It's always a treat, and I have many treats that I take today of your insights as well. So thank you for joining, everybody. Thank you, Mike, for all the preparation and all the data. Very insightful, and I think we'll see each other on March 5th. So put on your calendars, 11 a.m. Eastern.
Thank you, Nuno.